fishermen being hospitalized. However, throughout the stretch of the road, you can still find potholes that needs to be filled by the BBMP.
Even as the FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup is on in India, Kerala's Kozhikode witnessed an exhibition displaying a huge football boot. The dimensions are 17 feet in length and 6 feet in height, while it weighs 450 kilos. Russian suicide drones struck several residential buildings near Kyiv's central railway station today morning. While the drones damaged many buildings, no deaths have been reported in the strikes in the city. These attacks are the heaviest on Kyiv and come just a week after Russian missiles shook Ukraine last week. Scotland beat two-time champions West Indies by 42 runs at the 2022 T20 World Cup in Australia today. Scotland, batting first, had scored 166, chasing which West Indies could only manage 118. Scottish batsman George Munsey was awarded the man of the match. Speaking of the World Cup, we leave you with South African pacer Kagiso Rabada giving tips on how to impress your girlfriend's family. But here's a word of caution. This piece of advice from Rabada could probably land you in trouble. Thanks a lot for watching.
Namaste, Mami ji. East or West, my sauce is best. मैं आपके परिवार को पाके धनिया आ गया हूँ।
धन्य हो गया हूँ, धनिया हो गया नहीं, धन्य हो गया।
धनिया हो गया।
It's okay. पापा।
नमस्ते सुअर जी।
ससुर जी।
Sorry मैं चुम्मा चाहता हूँ।
चुम्मा, it's क्षमा चाहता हूँ. Let's go.
Namaste and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I'm Anand Narasimhan. Ladies and gentlemen, at the top half of this show, we're going to focus on the speech delivered to the entire grouping of the Communist Party of China by Xi Jinping as he looks all set for a third term. A third term that perhaps after Mao, he's the only other leader to do it. Does that make him the great leader? Does that put him in the legion of Mao as he so wants to be? Because unlike any other leaders in the recent past of the CCP, Xi Jinping has focused and tried to model himself on the ideals of Mao. There are also goals that have been set. 2027, centenary of the PLA, founding day of the PLA, 100 years of the PLA. And of course 2049, which is 100 years of the CCP. Will Xi Jinping, 100 years of CCP in power in China. So that's the 2049 goal. But many say he's advanced it by about 15 years to 2035. So the next 10, 15 years, ladies and gentlemen, are going to be critical in the way the CCP tries to push its way through. There will be impact on Bharat and of course globally, where many believe that the powers of America are on the wane and there is a new global order. So we'll try and decode this victory speech, and we've been able to also access government sources, intel sources who've listened to every word of what he said over those 104 minutes. And they've tried to say that be it tone, be it language, or be it vocabulary, there is a lot to be understood based on what he has said, what he has implied, and what he has not said but shown. So the aggression abroad, control at home, that is something which is evident in that speech. Strong language on American interference on Taiwan, and him talking about the reunification of Taiwan. He has very clearly said, but he's also said, we'll never commit to the abandoning of use of force. So that means that aspect, that military might and the use of force, that angle aspect remains. So what is implied on Taiwan, does that not also imply on Xinjiang? Does that also not imply on Taiwan, on Tibet? And then what does that mean? Reserve the option to take all necessary measures is what he has said. Hong Kong situation has moved from chaos to governance. So when full annexation happens and total control is taken, then that means there is governance. That's the projection that he is making. Continuity theme, harsh control and propagation. apparatus and policies. So that is something which is a continuity from his 2017 speech. Heavy emphasis on political loyalty. You remain committed to me, you survive. There are lots who have fallen by the wayside under this entire aspect of crackdown on corruption, ladies and gentlemen. Now, where does this all stand and how is it different from his 2017 speech? Let's try and understand that. The address and of course the India message. There are three big stresses that have happened. There is the security aspect that he's spoken about. He's talked about PLA modernization and also core interests. 104-minute speech, unlike the nearly 3-hour speech the last time around in 2017. Now in security, he has mentioned this word security 73 times. Separate section on national security, and the takeaway is renewed thrust on security establishment, safeguarding China's dignity and core interests. What does that mean when you talk about PLA modernization? Flaunting military prowess. And of course, he has spoken about the strengthening the claims at the line of actual control. Galwan 2A. There is a related video at the event that was shown and it was circulated in mainstream media, and this was about one of those military commanders, Chief Abao, who was toasted, and he was one of the guys at Galwan. So that means that fire is still not doused. That's what the interpretation that's being made also closer home here is. Core interests, momentous changes accelerating worldwide. Significant shift in international balance of power, he says. It presents China with strategic opportunities. So what should be the takeaway? Is it collaboration or intensified conflict? It can be either ways. Dynamic zero COVID policy. The border controls are not to be relaxed yet because he has underlined its zero COVID policy of China is working for them. That means there will be hardship for Indian students who had to come back, and of course businesses who are continuing to suffer because they said we will be nowhere but China. Now the world over businesses are saying ABC, that is anywhere but China, ladies and gentlemen. But is this speech, should this also set the warning bells ringing for India? That's the question that we are asking. Why should there be warning bells for India? Because is it conflict or collaboration? Somewhere the aggression in the tone, the way he is talking about security aspects and protecting China's core interests as defined by the CCP point to the fact that we should be ready for an intensified amount of conflict, although the dynamic could be different. Let's try and ask our experts, where do they stand? And they've been following, they've been watching China and also Xi's machinations for a while now. Sushant Singh, Senior Fellow, ORF, is with us. Sana Hashmi, Visiting Fellow, Taiwan Asia Exchange Foundation, is with us this evening. Andrew K.P. Leung, International and Independent China Strategist. He's based in Hong Kong, which Xi Jinping believes has got far greater governance and less chaos now. Dr. Roger Liu, Associate Professor at Flame University, and he knows a thing or two about what Xi has said and how to read in between the lines. But I'm going to start with Sana Hashmi and ask her, Sana, how would you interpret Xi Jinping's speech? And with respect to India, are we looking at far more greater turmoil and tumultuous times, or is it going to be that which will be transactional?
I think there is, as you also mentioned, there is continuity in his approach, specifically on the foreign policy front. The focus is going to be on security, but with India, I feel that the relations are not going to be normalized. It's, of course, already not business as usual. But I think this is what we are also going to see, because the new normal was already established when Xi Jinping first came to power. And I believe for him to acquire the third term would mean that China will be more assertive and bold in its approach, and India has been one of the major victims of China's aggression. So I believe the relations are only going to go downhill after she secures the third term. And I think India needs to brave itself for more problems with China in times to come.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that, Sana Hashmi? Why should there be more problems? And what kind of problems?
I think it's because this is what was established, and this is one of the USPs of Xi's term. And at home, China and Xi Jinping, it has been established as a bold and confident country that's standing up to the bullies. And India being a part of the quadrilateral dialogue, and with India-US partnership, I believe India is also being seen as an adversary. So I think on the border, India has to prepare itself for more problems, and generally as well. So I don't think India is getting any China's accommodative behavior, going to see China's accommodative behavior at the border. So I think India has to be firm with its approach, and India needs to prepare itself that it has to have more problems, it has to have more standoffs with China.
Dr. Roger Liu, he is very, very strongly worded on Taiwan, where he is committed to reunification. He's also said we will not stop or reconsider or give up the use of force. Largely, everybody thought that China wanted to win Taiwan or annex Taiwan without firing a single bullet or a single missile. It's just the psychological pressure built up. How would you read the speech?
I think specifically on...
Question to Dr. Roger Liu, Sanaji. Yeah.
If we look at the text itself, you will find that actually it's quite similar to what he has said before. Well, he do not rule out the option of using force, but the Chinese side will resort, as you know, most likely to peace. This is the main theme and the main tune of the Chinese Communist Party's propaganda machine. But what has changed for the past few years is that actually the PLA, after the reorganization after the end of 2016, it has become much stronger. And for the past few decades, they have been emulating their biggest enemy. And also, the PLA is the biggest fan of the U.S. armed forces. So they are trying to adopt the U.S. strategy and tactics. But, well, according to a lot of experts in military affairs, the PLA now has the ability to deny the U.S. rescuing forces for Taiwan in the years to come. So what has changed is the balance of the military power between the Taiwan Strait has changed, and what is worse is that the gap between the U.S. and China has been narrowing down. So I think this is the major difference that we are seeing here. And Xi Jinping has been, well, now we are entering a danger zone because Xi Jinping now has entered his third term, and he has broken this kind of convention that each generation lasts for only 10 years. So he gave his enemies within the party the biggest reason or the legitimacy to unite against him. So, well, for the coming 5 years, whatever he has been doing, whatever he has been done wrong, will be the target of the enemy within the party, and they will use this to mobilize the other factions within the party to attack him, and to respond to that, a war becomes a very convenient tool in his toolbox. What kind of war? Well, for Taiwan, it has ultimate legitimacy within the hearts and minds of the CCP party members, because they have been claiming that Taiwan to be part of China. This is the first thing. And second thing is India. What Sana has just mentioned is that I think for the Chinese, in the Chinese mindset, India is an easy target, because we have been trying to, India for the past few years, we have been trying to show our friendship to them. Like, if we should respect each other, we should take care of each other's sensitivity, respect, and mutual interest. And the Chinese know us. They say, well, whatever we do, you will come back for us. So we will be hard on you, and whatever happens, India will come back to us. So I think we have to change our mindset on this.
That is a big ask, Sushant Sareen. That is not going to be easy, because despite Galwan, despite our banning a lot of their apps, etc., India's imports from China have been at an all-time high. We may have tried to reduce our dependence as far as critical drug or the base drug is concerned, and we've from 70% we brought it down back to about 52% and further down. But as far as the pharmaceutical ingredient is concerned, but overall, we've not reduced our dependence. We have actually increased our import bill from them.
So, Anand, one, I think the mindset in India has changed. It has been changing for some time, but I think after 2020, it has changed irretrievably. Now, just because you talk softly does not mean that you will not carry the big stick. And I don't see, it's one thing to, engage into that Punjabi kind of rhetoric with the Pakistanis, because that's the language they understand.
Right.
But quite another on how you are dealing with China. So yeah, you will speak nicely to them, you will speak softly, you will keep the doors of diplomacy open. But have we lowered our defenses along the borders? I don't think so. In fact, if anything, we have strengthened our borders, we have strengthened our defenses. If you look at the kind of mobilization and the force arrangement along the borders, it's pretty impressive. And this is all along the borders, number one. Number two, the kind of infrastructure we are building. Number three, the kind of, I won't call it alliances, but the kind of networks, if you will. Even that's not a very correct word, but we are engaging with many of the other countries, the Quad being one example. And I think that does indicate the direction which India is moving. On the issue of decoupling, I could not agree more with you that yes, we need to decouple ourselves economically from China, and the faster the better. But I suppose it's one thing to talk about it and quite another to do it. I think a lot of effort has been made, is being made, but I think it will take time, because for over 2 decades, we have decided to outsource all our manufacturing to China. Even Indian companies thought it more profitable to get stuff manufactured in China and import it into India and sell it under their brand name.
Yes.
Because many Chinese brands don't sell very well in India, because of quality concerns and others. But many Indian companies were doing it. Now we need to move that manufacturing back to India. We need to make it more competitive. And that, I think, steps are being taken in that direction. Are they being taken fast enough? Perhaps not. And I think there's a lot more we need to do, but I think we are getting there. But it's not just us, Anand, who has to decouple from China. I think you are seeing efforts at decoupling happening in the West as well. Whether it's the US, whether it's Australia, whether it's Japan, whether it's the European countries, efforts are underway to start decoupling. And that is why manufacturing is moving out of China and moving into countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, India, many other countries. And I think that is something which is going to have an impact going forward. Does this mean that this will change the Chinese calculus? Perhaps. I would go along with both my esteemed colleague Sana, and it's good to see her on Indian television after having followed her on Twitter for quite some time, and Dr. Lu. I think what they are saying is correct. Xi Jinping might be the strongest at this point in time in his career. Right. But I think once you reach the apex of your power, then it's only a slippery slope down. He's not going to go out retire. He's going to go out in ignominy. Now, whether that ignominy comes because he fights a war which he cannot win, or it comes because his rivals within the Communist Party overthrow him and gang up against him, it's very difficult to say what will bring about that fall. But I think nobody lasts forever, and neither will he.
No, whether nobody lasts forever or not, the next 5 years he is going to be there. And Andrew K. Leong, does he want India on his side, especially when he's trying to change the new global order? When China is trying to say that they want to replace America as the next big hegemony? And of course, when we are seeing a region full of turmoil, he may have blown up or amped up Taiwan to try and build up sentiment internally, because that's what helps you, especially if you have a lot of detractors within. But going forward, can he continue to be expansionist in his designs? Can he continue to try and salami slice into Indian territory and hope India will continue to be an able ally?
Well, if you read his 2-hour speech carefully, the vast majority of his speech is focusing China's internal challenges. In spite of the fact, of course, he has recapped the achievements under his tutelage. These GDP per capita has doubled during the past 10 years, and China's contribution to world growth is something reaching something like 38%, more than all the G7 countries combined. But having said that, I mean, he admits that there are huge problems within China in this new area of global change, including, for example, the continuing problem of corruption and the mantra that he's using corruption to do down his enemy is really a travesty of the whole truth. But having said that, he also underlines that China's wish is not just to exceed any other country or supplant any country. Of course, he admits that all countries, big or small, has their own individual interests at heart. India would defend its own interests, China would defend its own interests. And nowhere in the speech you find that he's being antagonistic against India. And in fact, there are areas of common interest between China and India. And look at even the approach to the Ukraine war. Both countries are not playing by Americans' playbook all the time. So I think that what President Xi highlights is a world in which there is no longer any unipolar version of how to govern a country or how what kind of model should be practiced by all countries regardless. So each country should look after itself and try to bring better lives for its people. And in fact, a large proportion of his speech is devoting how to improve the lives of the Chinese people, both economically and culturally and environmentally. So I think that this is a lot of misreading of China. And the biggest misreading, of course, is in the West, in the national security white paper that's just been published in the United States. Each and every page, 48 pages in all, China is painted as an existential threat. But as President Xi was trying to say, that China is not the main interest. Is not to exceed any other country. Is to bring China better lives for its people and to bring China to a higher level of development.
No, but bringing better lives for its people or for whoever who are loyal to the Communist Party and the PLA cannot be at the cost of India's sovereignty and India's interests. And this is where the bigger question is, that is China going to act in its own interests at the cost of India? Yes, there may be a point of view as far as the US hegemony is concerned and the US narrative is concerned. And that's why, and to KP Lunga, I'm not looking at what America is saying. I'm looking at it purely from what is going to be India's view and India's worldview. And we are the nations who are neighbors. America is halfway across the globe. It may be trying to assert its influence here. But what are the equations that India and China are going to have with each other? Because so far China looked at India as dispensable, not even as a worthy adversary. It looked at it as India as a weak nation with a huge amount of population but no ability. But that's all changing. And if India is asserting itself, then will China look at it as an opportunity or as a problem? And therein lies the difference, Roger Liu.
Well, if India is becoming more assertive, will China view this as opportunity or a threat? Well, I would say that China has been trying to play the world politics as a chessboard. And they have been playing a lot of chess around us, I mean India. Well, we should look beyond the LAC. The LAC is just one of the battlefields or the battlefronts that we are facing along with China. What is more important is around us. The IOR, the Indian Ocean region, our neighbor countries, including Bhutan, including Maldives, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Pakistan. And China has been trying very best, using any chance that we have lost to infiltrate, to consolidate their support with our neighboring countries and offer them opportunities to counter against us. Well, from the perspective of these smaller countries, of course, these are chances. But when Chinese are talking about respect, the mutual, sensitivities and interests, and all the other territorial coherence, well, do they think about India in this way? Well, they will not. When they try to expand their influence to India, or the Indian Ocean region, they will do that. In 2018, they have passed out this, what they call the olive branch to India, saying that we should work together in Afghanistan. All right, and we say, well, Afghanistan affairs should be dealt with in a multilateral, basis,
Right.
and we should not. China and India, the total idea that China has been offering India is China India plus one,
Yeah.
which gives an open door for Chinese hand to, to touch upon what should be the Indian core interest in the area, and they thought this is like a friendly gesture. This is not. If India has been doing the same thing, like we will sail to Taiwan Strait as many times as we want. We want to extend our influence to South China Sea, and we are going to do constantly scientific research over there. See what the Chinese will respond to that.
Yeah.
They will send out a warship to drive us away. So I think there is a discrepancy here, the strategic perspective that India and China India should especially think about when they are facing the Chinese offensive.
But that challenges with us, Sushant Sareen, because China doesn't view us as an equal. We may almost have the same amount of population, but do we have the same amount of economic heft and might? Do we have the same amount of military heft and might? Because might recognizes might. That's the reality. We've asserted ourselves only now, but China is leaps and bounds ahead of us. So we've got a lot of catching up to do for them to even take us seriously.
I think that's a no-brainer, Anand. I think anybody who says that we are on par with the Chinese is living in cloud cuckoo land. That's a no-brainer. Yes, there are power differentials and some pretty huge ones. But are those power differentials of a nature then that the Chinese can just sweep in and push us aside? If they were of that nature, then they would have already done it, wouldn't they? They've done it in other places. And for people to say that, no, but the Chinese are not expansionists, they are only interested within what is happening in their country. Look, I don't give a damn for what they say. I look at what they do on the ground, right? And that is what we should only focus on, whether it's on the Indian Ocean region, whether it's in, on our land borders, whether it's on any other, any other domain. What they do is even more important than what they say. And yes, it is true that the Chinese have always spoken with a forked tongue with us. That is very clear. They say something to us, they try and beguile us. But I think that part of getting beguiled by what the Chinese say, I think that ended in 2020. At least I hope so. At least that's the impression which we get. Does that mean that we will continue to have verbal fisticuffs with them? No. But will we take in what they say with a fair degree of seriousness? Absolutely not. We will see what they do on the ground. But having said that, Anand, even these power differentials, they might not be number one as much as what is being made out to be, in at least in the military field. But there are ways and means to actually lower those power differentials.
Right.
Partly through your own tactics and your strategies, partly through the diplomatic engagements you enter into, the diplomatic and the military alliances that you strike, the understandings which you reach, the other multiple fronts which you open. For example, and I've never quite understood this, there was always this diffidence. For example, the Vietnamese were interested in buying the BrahMos missile. Now, I don't know whether there were some licensing problems or there was some other issues. But if there are countries like Vietnam, which are not exactly on the best of terms with the Chinese, who require these kind of missile systems, then I think India should be in a position to supply them. Did the Chinese not do it with the Pakistanis?
Correct.
The entire Pakistani nuclear program and the missile program is of Chinese origin. And of course, some of it North Korean, which was also Chinese. Right? So the Chinese have played this game, and we can very easily adopt certain asymmetric, strategies to pare down whatever advantages the Chinese have. We might not be able to do it completely, but we can do it sufficiently to keep the Chinese at bay, to keep them unsettled. I think there is a lot that can be done in that domain. So let's not get overawed and think that the Chinese are 10 feet tall. They are not. They are just like we are. They are not any different from us. They are as chaotic as we are in many things. Now, just because they have a totalitarian government, does not mean anything.
Yeah.
They can do many things which chaotic democracies like India will not be able to do. Does that mean that we make them 10 feet tall? Certainly not.
Well, in jiu-jitsu, they say that you use the opponent's strength against the opponent and you turn it around and you make the strength the biggest weakness. But Sana Hashmi, right now, the economic heft which China is trying to claim over the years of what it has built is also countered by its own internal issues. Yes, Andrew was right when he talked a lot about what the internal issues of China are, and they need to sort that out. They're also vulnerable because the entire global sentiment is to look at other markets beyond. They have a huge issue as far as large-scale product and dumping which is concerned, and many people are now revisiting the RCEP agreements. But what is India going to do? How is India going to make itself available? The Prime Minister has put out a vision, but are we as a nation ready for it? Are we as a nation ready to underline saying that there are certain territories where you can't come down and settle? So on ground, we also continue to pinprick the PLA, like in Lipulek, like in Arunachal, like in a lot of the areas. We try and secure more of Gilgit-Baltistan, which it's trying to slowly cut off. We've only got Siachen separating Aksai Chin and Gilgit-Baltistan. And if that happens, then strategically we are cut off from the rest of Central Asia. So there are a lot of issues which we have to also got to address. Are we thinking at that dynamic?
I think India's China policy has been satisfactory, and I totally agree with Mr. Shashank Sareen when he said that we are doing whatever we could do in our best capabilities. And I feel we have to look at China's past approach. Galwan clashes have been heralded as a success, and it's a part of Xi's legacy that China's relationship with a lot of countries has been retrieved, and showcasing that China is responding to countries that are against China. And in fact, India is the only country in the Asian region that could play an important role in containing China, and China is very well aware of this fact. And China's approach has been working to its advantage, and I think it has managed to India. It has managed a lot of countries in the region. I think what India has been doing is remarkable with China. It's not easy for a country like India to share a border with such a bully hegemonic power, but I think India has been managing well. Dr. Jaishankar has talked about diplomacy, and he said that he was a diplomat. He is now the minister. He has to follow the diplomatic tools while dealing with China. In my opinion, diplomacy is working only to a certain extent. We have to rethink our China policy as we move ahead, and Xi Jinping is going to be there for life, at least for his life. He's the president for life. It's just not about 5 years. It's about the rest of his life, I believe. So I believe diplomacy is working and it's temporarily diffusing tensions, but we have to look at the long-term solution. We can't just keep having border standoff and then talking about China openly, all this verbal commentary. I think we need to have a firmer approach, and this is how we are going to stop China. We have to focus on resolving the boundary dispute. Of course, the policy has been not to put the boundary dispute at the back burner anymore, but we have to really think of how to persuade China to resolve the border dispute. And it's a pressure point for China. Whenever it wants to keep India within its boundaries, it just initiates another border standoff, and the intensity is just increasing year by year, I believe. So we really have to resolve the boundary dispute. We have to focus on that.
No, but that is something which the Chinese don't want to resolve. The PLA does not want to resolve this. If they wanted to resolve it, if it was in their interest, they would have resolved it long back. Because the fact that they've not resolved it is that over the last decades, and if you look at it at least more than the last 2 centuries, they have come into India, or what was Indian territory, by nearly 2,000 to 3,000 square kilometers. That's the amount of territory that they've been slowly able to slice over the last 2 centuries. I'm not talking about the last 2-3 decades. So this is something which is important. Shyam Sarangi's report in 2012 says 640 square kilometers of land that they've already moved in, which is sovereign Indian territory since independence. So it's a different story altogether, or since '62, the '62 war itself. So, but Andrew K.P. Leong, going forward, has Xi Jinping decided that he can easily take on India? He does not need India as a friend. In the growing geostrategical dynamic where things are changing, would you agree that China needs India as a friend?
Well, I don't think that India features very highly in President Xi's calculations, because India is the least of President Xi's problems or challenges. Of course, he refers to the change in the global order. And what has led to this change, of course, is the, the lack of capacity of the United States to call the shots, all the time. As developing countries are rising, China, India, and certain and in Turkey and things like that. So this is the kind of one size fits all, one country dictates the terms all on all fours is really past. So this and that translates in a great deal of dynamics for relationship between different countries. And I think, as I said at the beginning, each country should defend its own interests, especially national security. But I think that there's a danger that countries can be fixated only on security, fixated on the military, without paying sufficient attention to economics, which transform the lives and livelihoods of the people of the respective countries. And the one major change in the global order is the rise of the developing world. According to the OECD's recent study, the developing world economies would account for something like 60% of the global economy by the year 2030. So I think that one has got to have a larger vision, looking beyond all this transactional or anecdotal.
But the fact is, sir, economics is transaction, and relationships are transaction. The other the other aspect, sir, is that when the opponent underestimates you, you should use it to your advantage, provided you don't overestimate yourself. So I have run out of time, but it's been a very interesting discourse, and it just leaves it at a point where we want to talk a little more in terms of what should we physically actually do strategically, what it means for India when we are looking at China on the one hand, and we are also looking at this dynamic that is happening with America on the other. Things are on a flux, ladies and gentlemen, and this is why the Prime Minister keeps saying this is India's opportunity, and it is that moment, carpe diem. That's what we need to do as a nation. There's a reason why we had this discussion, because it is important for us to understand the dynamics as Bharat. We're going to take a short break, ladies and gentlemen, and when we come back, we focus on what's happening in Jammu and Kashmir, where again, it's a historic moment when people get up and tear down a poster of an organization that's been the bane or the root cause of all the trouble, and that too because of what happened with Puran Krishan Bhatt. It's important. Big blowback against Pak proxies. Stay with us.
इंडिविजुअल नहीं है, बल्कि बदलते दौर में बदलती सोच है कश्मीर की, कश्मीरी नौजवानों की। पिछले 30 साल से आपके और मेरे जैसे यहाँ निहत्थे लोग मारे जा रहे हैं। उसे एक इंडिविजुअल ने नहीं मारा, बल्कि ऐसी सोच रखने वाले हर एक सदस्य ने मारा।
जब तक इंसाफ नहीं होगा कोई बंद नहीं। आज तो 370 नहीं है, मेरी क्यों मृत्यु हो रही है? अगर वो बेहतर कर दिए तो मेरे फतेह बेचारा मारा नहीं जाता। कहाँ है हालत सब बेहतर?
This is critical, ladies and gentlemen, and this is monumental what's happened today. This was the hub of all activity that was against the very interest of Bharat. They were residing on Bharat, on sovereign Indian territory and batting for the enemy. For decades, they played that nasty game where everything inside was against Bharat and for Pakistan. But today, these are Kashmiris, these are locals who have stood there, not just said Akhir Kab Tak, but they have torn down this board. Yes, the office was defunct. Yes, the members inside are all behind bars or hiding in little holes like mice that scurry away. But most importantly, this building stood there and this board stood there, a stark reminder of the horrors that this lot sitting here has machinated over the last few decades. And like one of the members said there, that it's not just that one individual who killed or one or two individuals who used Pak bullets to kill an Indian citizen in Puran Krishan Bhatt, but it is the mentality of those who backed such. Yes, this has been torn down, but perhaps the political edifice also needs to be torn down. The edifice that actually propped this lot up, the edifice that continues to give them cover fire, and the edifice that believes that it can come back to the seat of power in Jammu and Kashmir by riding on a sentiment that is alien to India, that believes that India is not their place and that India just needs to be used for their own personal machinations. Those who have played this dirty game of politics, should they deserve a place in Naya Jammu and Kashmir, or is this just the beginning of the end of this lot? No place for Pak proxies in Bharat is the question that we ask. Farooq Renzu Shah, Chairman Jamaat Etiqad Hanafiya International and Kashmir Society, is with us this evening. Amit Raina, Kashmiri activist and also who got his roots in Kashmir, has been championing this for a long time with us. Namaste. We're hoping for Sushil Panditji also to join us any moment now. But Mr. Farooq Renzu Shah, let me ask you, this lot, should they be allowed to go ahead and go back to the people? Should they be given a free run? Those who sat over, presided and went on an international holiday when Jammu Kashmir was burning and Kashmiris were being forced out in the name of political Islam. Should such lot be allowed to peddle the kind of narrative they did today? Why should they be allowed? Or is this tearing down of this board of the Hurriyat conference the beginning of the end of such lot?
I was listening to you very carefully and watching it. I tell you, today it has gone on Amazon, Kashmir Bear's Throne. This is my book on Kashmir. And you were talking of the edifices which have created the situation, the infrastructure of violence. I call them Kashmir Bears. Bears, and they were sitting on the throne for centuries. And they have created the dynastic and the gangs all around. And what has been the story of Kashmir? The story of Kashmir has been create a wedge, devour the people and rule. In whatever mechanism you had, today you have referred one of the leaders of Kashmir telling, unless you give 370 back, your every Kashmiri will be killed. Every Kashmiri Pandit will be killed. He calls a Kashmir as Kashmiri Muslim, and Pandits will be killed because 370 will not be back. And it is the same 370 which has been owned by Imran Khan when he was the Prime Minister of Pakistan, and Shah Mahmud Qureshi hailing the endures of Gupkar gang. Listen and see this. And today's establishment of Pakistan continues with the same narrative. So what is the narrative? Narrative is create villains and create the villains is before you. I remember in 1989, 15 August, same leader whom you have referred just now is telling justice can be killed. Till then, each Pandit will be killed. Was telling that this Indian army has burned the Batmalu. He created the venom. Till now, till that day, 1989, it was being treated at Batmalu as a city was burned in 1965 war between India and Pakistan. But he changed that narrative, created the hate. Today also, the hate is being created on criminal lines. And people, you call the proxy, the board is one of the proxies, but it is the minor proxy. Today, the proxy is there. They continue your VIP treatment. They have the same person who is telling you every Kashmiri Pandit will be killed unless you give us 370 back. Is having 100% security, elite VIP protocol. And the person who's telling
why is that being
there
given?
Won't be any shoulder.
No, that is wrong, Mr. Andusha. That should not be allowed. Why should such people be allowed that, Sushil Panditji? On the one hand, it hurts, it pains every time we lose a life. And when they are targeted just because they are Kashmiri Hindus or because they are those who decided that they will not leave their homes or they will salute the tricolor and work under the tricolor, this is their country. Then they don't peddle an enemy narrative, so they've got to succumb to the Pakistani bullets. Then these politicians should be made accountable. They should be made to give an account of the Pakistani bullets they sponsored, the 500,000+ rifles and ammunition they allowed to enter into Jammu and Kashmir when they were in power. No questions are asked of them, and they are still given VIP treatment.
I agree with you. They are invited by the Prime Minister over tea and snacks to suggest what should be done in Kashmir. And that too after keeping them in detention for several months because they were a threat to Kashmir's peace. Can you imagine? They were accused of, on the floor of Parliament, for dragging Kashmir to disaster, to complete ruin through their policies, through their hide and seek relationship with Hurriyat and with Jihad, and then they are supposed to tell us how to kickstart democracy in Kashmir, how to restore normalcy in Kashmir. Through your program, I must inform your viewers that Article 370 was the issue on which Pakistan expelled our High Commissioner, our envoy.
Yeah.
China went to Security Council on this issue. I don't think India has ever gone to Security Council against China on anything, including Galwan, including the aggressions at Eastern Ladakh, or for that matter, India has ever expelled Pakistani envoy, whether it was an attack on our parliament or Kargil or attack on Mumbai or Pulwama. Have we ever expelled Pakistani envoy? And on 370, if Indian parliament using its jurisdiction on constitution through an open debate and session arrives at a decision to which it is entitled.
Yes.
Our envoy is expelled, and today, till date, we don't have an envoy. It is 3 years. So this shows whose interest 370 was serving in our constitution. But the irony is, Hurriyat operated with a banner and an office in the heart of Srinagar. It was allowed to not only operate and own the jihad in Kashmir, it was fed and looked after by our own government, our own state, through hundreds of crores spent on it. Likewise, JKLF was banned only on 5th of February 2019. Accused of a genocide it committed in 1990. Do you see the irony in it?
Yes.
The hearts and minds we are out to win in Kashmir are the ones who have struck at our roots time and again. And it took ordinary citizens to bring down and tear down those banners. The Indian state, our system, sustained them. They didn't tear it down. It beats all reason or logic that we feed the implacable enemy within in the hope that we will win hearts and minds.
No, I agree.
This is the irony, and we still haven't learnt our lessons. Still haven't learnt our lessons.
So, but what should be done, Amit Rana? One of the counter arguments is that you have empowered the ordinary citizen to the extent that in broad daylight they can not just come and deface that board but tear it down. They can go ahead and write India at a place which used to be the hub of the Pakistani narrative. So that's what you've done in the last 3 years. But why should you allow those people who have ruled the roost on this entire divisive politics a free run? Why should the state pay for their security? If they are so empowered and if they believe they have public support, let them walk out without any security. They commanded that security when they held a particular post. Right now they don't have any post. Do you agree, disagree that all sorts of security should be withdrawn from them? Let them walk on the streets of Pakistan if they want to, and if they have the courage, let them walk on the streets of Hindustan without any security.
It is not only security which they enjoy. It is the privileges which they enjoy that Chief Minister or Head of the State continues. Mehbooba Mufti continues to live in a house which is designated as CM House. She still lives on Gupka Road, which is the poshest road in J&K. Same story for Omar Abdullah. Not only they enjoy all protocols which are given to a chief minister, to enjoy all security and top class security.
Should that be taken away? Should that be taken away immediately?
I have been.
गुप्कार रोड में आपका खुद का घर है तो आप रहिए, सरकार का और हमारे टैक्स पेयर के पैसे पे नहीं रहेंगे आप.
On what basis are you giving Mehbooba Mufti all the privileges she is enjoying today, especially when she is going and praising Pakistan and has only venom against India and its people? Now, coming back to today's statement of Farooq Abdullah, right, is that he should be arrested for clearly going and supporting the killing of Kashmiri Pandits, saying it is justified because Article 370 has been abrogated. Even one of the debates today, the National Conference spokesperson Nilufar Masood justified killing of Kashmiri Pandits, saying that because Article 370 has been abrogated, Kashmiri Pandits can be killed. So I honestly don't know why can't they be treated on par with Jammu Kashmir Liberation Front for being white collar terrorists. They are nothing. They have now coming back to what has happened in Kashmir today. My expectations from state, unfortunately, have always been varied. But I have always said that if anything that improves situation in the valley, it has to be people of Kashmir. Like Punjab saw people getting and saying enough is enough. Kashmir also can get better only when the common person, the common Kashmiri gets up and says not anymore. And I think I saw the first sign of that today. Imagine them attacking and damaging an office of all powerful, all almighty of Kashmir Hurriyat Conference. It shows how things have changed and how people are now willing to confront the demon that has been haunting Kashmir for last 32 years. It's a beginning, and I hope this becomes a mass movement where the 20% which is now ruling, which believes in ruling Kashmir, which has been ruling Kashmir for last 32 years, gets demolished, gets buried, and the 80% which wants peace is up again.
But should that start with the fact that the moment somebody like a Farooq Abdullah says like this, what he said today, when a Mehbooba Mufti goes out and openly bats for these terrorists, trying to justify the killings or give them cover fire, Mr. Farooq Ranjusha, then all security that is provided by the state should be removed. Is there any rule which currently states that they need to get state protection?
Actually, there is a quid pro quo for the votes in Kashmir. Actually, they have not created a general vote bank. They have been monopolizing from 1947 the terror polling booths. Those terror polling booths which have been created by the dynastic rulers, they deprive the general people to vote. Posters are being printed in their political headquarters, boycott. You will be shot dead if you will vote. So they deprive those people who are aghast to them, but outside they use the Indian democratic setup. We are the representative. When we tell, like today, when this leader tells that Kashmiri Pandit will continue to be killed unless 370 is back. He is not only blackmailing the Indian establishment, Indian power, Indian army, but at the same time, he is defaming us, every Kashmiri Muslim. He is telling to the world, Kashmiri Muslims are responsible for the killings of the Pandit. While as in 90, it was their narrative that you have been evicted by the general masses. That was not the fact. The day and 52 Muslims were killed in Gaukadal, it was he who was the chief minister. It was when the Ganju, Mr. Ganju, Neelkat Ganju, was killed on the street of the Lal Chowk, Hari Singh High Street. Not a munshi of a thana went there, not a gypsy went to pick up the body, not a SHO went, not a SP went, not a SSP went, not a DIG or IG or the chief minister himself went. Means they were giving a message of terror. Otherwise, it was the establishment being paid by on Indian money, but being used by somebody else, giving a message, but defaming a Kashmiri Muslim. Yesterday, Puran Krishan was killed. I had and watched yesterday thousands assemble in the downtown area called Zindshah Stadium, and who prayed for him, who really just blasted the terror setups and said that we don't support that.
No, if that
on one hand.
See, that is true, and the fact of the matter is, it is happening for anybody and everybody who's standing with the tricolour, who's the true spirit of Jammu and Kashmir is coming through at this point in time, and people are expressing themselves. They've got the confidence. So then, Sushil Panditji, let's try and collectively make a demand. Let the Jammu and Kashmir administration take the right stand. Withdraw security and state-backed any backup and privileges for all those who do not respect the tricolour and do not respect the sentiment of Bharat.
100% one.
Why should such? अगर इनको लगता है इनके पास पॉपुलर मैंडेट है, जो 7% वोटर टर्नआउट पे जाकर MP और CM बने हैं, if they believe they have the popular mandate, let them walk on the streets of Jammu and Kashmir and see what kind of mandate they get. Why should the soldier who they continue to abuse, why should the people who they continue to disrespect bear their costs and protect their lives?
Anand, just withdrawal of privileges may not be enough. They need to be tried. They need to be tried in a tribunal for all their acts, heinous acts of having compromised the administration under their own watch, for having appointed dreaded criminals, having benefited from a genocide.
Absolutely, sir.
They need to be tried, they need to be sentenced.
But more than that, they need to be made an example of, saying this is not how you behave, trying to loot the country and also enjoy its privileges. I have run out of time. I didn't realize I have run out of time. Thank you very much to all our panelists. Stay with us. Brass Tacks follows.
Good evening. You're watching Brass Tacks. I'm Ridhima Bhatnagar. It was a day of summons, dharna and political posturing. The Aam Aadmi Party went full throttle after Delhi Deputy Chief Minister Manish Sisodia was summoned by the CBI in the alleged Liquorgate scam. The AAP reiterated their narrative of this being a witch hunt and political vendetta. Before reaching the CBI office, Manish Sisodia visited Rajghat and addressed his party workers, saying that he is ready for this Qurbani for his country. The BJP unexpected line slammed the AAP for trying to create a distraction against the allegations of possible quid pro quo. So was this really a fair investigation, or was this harassment by misusing agencies? That's the question that we'll take to our guests in just a bit, but first the story.
2 months after CBI officials raided his residence in connection with irregularities in the Delhi government's excise policy, Deputy Chief Minister Manish Sisodia was summoned for questioning by the agency. And the Aam Aadmi Party pulled out all stops to turn the summons into a show of strength. Sisodia left home after a tilak ritual, accompanied by top leaders of the party. As AAP workers lined the streets, he took out a roadshow in an open-roof SUV, waving to the crowds. He declared that his arrest was imminent due to upcoming elections in Gujarat.
ये लोग मुझे जेल में डालने की तैयारी इसीलिए कर रहे हैं क्योंकि इनको लगता है कि मैं गुजरात जाऊंगा तो लोगों के स्कूल बनने की उम्मीद और मजबूत होगी। गुजरात में भारतीय जनता पार्टी बुरी तरह से हार रही है और आम आदमी पार्टी की सरकार बनने वाली है।
Sisodia even made a stop at Mahatma Gandhi's memorial and compared himself to the father of the nation.
जिस तरह से बापू को षड्यंत्र में फंसा के अंग्रेजों की सरकार ने झूठे मुकदमे कर के जेल में भेजा, आज मेरे ऊपर भी एक फर्जी मुकदमा करके मुझे जेल भेजने की तैयारी की जा रही है।
Finally, Sisodia made his way inside CBI's headquarters, where he was presented with evidence in the case and statements of the other accused. As he was questioned, AAP workers gathered outside CBI's office, raising slogans and protesting against the summons. Several AAP leaders were promptly detained by the police.
The senior police officials are on the ground. The SHO, local SHO from this area, Lodi Colony area, is now making announcements asking them to vacate from this location. The Vajra Vahan has also been placed in position.
AAP convener and Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal firmly put his weight behind his deputy, even tweeting a cartoon depicting Sisodia as a hero.
अभी उन्होंने गुजरात आना था, लेकिन आज इन लोगों ने मनीष सिसोदिया को गिरफ्तार कर लिया। वो नहीं चाहते कि मनीष सिसोदिया गुजरात में जाके चुनाव का प्रचार करें। मैं मनीष जी को कहना चाहता हूं, आप चिंता मत करो, आपके ना आने से प्रचार बंद नहीं होने वाला। ये सारी जनता प्रचार कर रही है, घर घर जाके प्रचार कर रही है।
The BJP claimed AAP is behaving like it has won the World Cup of corruption.
ये जश्न भ्रष्टाचार है। जिस प्रकार से मनीष सिसोदिया आज एक खुले कार में अपने समर्थकों के साथ नारे लगाते हुए फूल माला डाले हुए निकले हैं, it seems as if the Aam Aadmi Party has won the World Cup of corruption.
Sisodia is accused number 1 in CBI's FIR on the now scrapped excise policy, which handed over the sale of liquor to private players, shutting down government-run outlets in the capital. So is it political vendetta, or is the law catching up with Manish Sisodia?
So now we're understanding Manish Sisodia's questioning has ended for the day. He's in fact left the CBI headquarters after being grilled for over 9 hours. Remember, the questioning started somewhere around 11 a.m. this morning. Sources are now telling CNN News 18 that he in fact has not been called for questioning again. What we're also understanding is the CBI will evaluate the answers that he's given before deciding the next course of action. My colleague Arunima now joining us from outside the CBI headquarters. She's been tracking all these developments for us all day long. So Arunima, the big update, one, Manish Sisodia in fact has left the CBI headquarters. But what is interesting is, as of now, he's not been called for questioning again. What are sources within the CBI telling you? Are they convinced with the kind of answers that they've gotten today?
Say that what they're saying at this stage is that this was technical investigation. There are paper trails that were put forward, papers that Mr. Sisodia were shown. So his answers will have to be evaluated. His answers will have to be matched with those being given by his co-accused like Vijay Nair, Abhishek Bonapalli, and also the answers that Mr. Mahindru has given to the Enforcement Directorate. So this will take time. Perhaps a week later, 15 days later, at a later date, you will hear Mr. Sisodia being asked to come back again to the CBI headquarters. But at this stage, what the CBI is saying is that we have let him go for today, and we will have to evaluate his answers and then take a call about the next course of action. Of course, politics that we have seen about this case could play out once again. Mr. Sisodia repeatedly was asked by me when he was leaving if he wanted to say anything, if he had any comments to make. But we are now hearing that once he reaches his residence, perhaps he was going to address the press. Here, when he left, the broad smile was the only answer that he had to give to me.
Arunima, quickly also, what are sources within the CBI telling you? What was the kind of line of questioning that we saw with Manish Sisodia?
So he was asked about the excise policy. He was asked about how they decided upon coming up with this policy, because the charge is that without taking the right consent from the authorities concerned, this policy was brought about. So why was that done? Does he know people who are supposed to be his close aides, like Vijay Nair, for example? How does he know them? The money trail that the CBI has alleged that people close to him, like Mr. Arjun Pandey, Vijay Nair, were receiving benefits in terms of cash from ultimate beneficiaries of the excise policy. Why was this money routed to them is what CBI wants to know. So he was asked about what Vijay Nair has said about his association with the Aam Aadmi Party, his association with Manish Sisodia. CBI wants to cross-check if the two answers are similar or they're completely divergent, because that will give them some insight as to who's lying.
Absolutely. Arunima, thanks a lot for getting us all those details. So we'll really have to see, as Arunima pointed out, as of now, sources within the CBI telling CNN News 18 that Manish Sisodia has not been called for questioning. A new date hasn't been given. They'll evaluate the answers as of now. This is also a time that we want to break down some details in terms of what was the line of questioning that was used by the CBI. What were these pertinent questions that were posed to Manish Sisodia? First, of course, is when was the implementation of the excise policy decided? More importantly, if there was so much faith in this policy, why was there a U-turn? Other aspect is, do you know Vijay Nair? He's somebody who's already been arrested, and Sameer Mahindru as well. Vijay Nair, of course, the Aam Aadmi Party time and again has said that was just somebody who was handling communication.
दिल्ली में 10,000 करोड़ का एक्साइज घोटाला हुआ, लेकिन आज मैंने सीबीआई में जाके देखा, मैंने देखा कि कोई घोटाला तो वहाँ है ही नहीं। घोटाले की तो कुछ मसला ही नहीं है वहाँ पे। सारा केस फर्जी है। मैं जानता हूं सारा केस फर्जी है, और आज मैंने सीबीआई में 9 घंटे की पूछताछ के दौरान 9 घंटे जो मैं रहा वहां पे, वहां भी मैं समझ गया कि किस तरह से सारा केस फर्जी है और किस तरह से इन्होंने पूरी साजिश की गई है। आज मुझे समझ में आया कि इन्होंने सीबीआई में केस किसी घोटाले की जांच के लिए नहीं करा रखा। इन्होंने सीबीआई में जो मेरे खिलाफ केस करा रखा है वो दिल्ली में एक्चुअली ऑपरेशन लोटस को कामयाब करने के लिए करा रखा है। ये बात पहले भी मुझे बाहर से समझ में आ रही थी, लेकिन आज अंदर जाके सीबीआई के हेडक्वार्टर में 9 घंटे तक मेरे को और समझ में आई कि